everybody. Welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast. I am your host, Derek, and I have my co-host, Ryan, here with me.
Hello.
Hello. Nice little slow wave there. Ryan, for
Yeah,
those
all
of
you
you,
all you audio people are really gonna love that.
yeah, we're going to do lots of visual things for those just listening. But you
Yes,
can watch us on YouTube. You can watch us on other social media outlets like Facebook, for
it's
example.
true.
Yeah. But who are we? We are the Coming of Cage podcast where we talk about Nicolas Cage movies, all of them. Every single one of them will be discussed on this show at some point. And we pick our movies based on our Wheel-O Cage where we spin and it tells us which Nicolas Cage movie we're going to be talking about. This week's a little different,
We
right,
also
Ryan?
do specialized bingo
Um,
that we came up with on our own during the movies.
you mean Cage-O?
Show. It's a separate video. So if you're looking for those, go to our YouTube channel. But yeah,
Yeah, totally separate. You can go to comingofcage.com to find all the cool bonus content we have, Wheel of Cage, Cage-O, all those types of things. But Ryan, I thought you might want to tell people why this particular episode is a little different than usual.
yeah, it's a little bit of a weird one because we picked last week. So there's a lot of things on or not a lot. There's several projects on IMDb for Nicolas, Mr. Cage, our one true God and Savior, that aren't really something that we could discuss for an hour, give or take. Like, what we would be talking about this week, for the most part, is a full movie. But what we ran on the wheel was a weird kind of cameo trailer inside of another movie. And so it's like a 2-minute long video and he's in it for about 15 seconds. So obviously we can't fill a whole episode with that. So we're also doing a full movie. We did the wheel a second time, bonus spin last week.
Bonus
And
spin.
yeah, so we're talking about two things and it'll be the length of one thing
That's right.
because we don't have much to say about the first thing.
So the first thing is 2007's Werewolf Women of the SS, which, as Ryan says, is a fake trailer inside of the movie Grindhouse. So we're going to talk about that briefly before we move on to 1998's film City of Angels, which is a full-length feature film that Nic Cage co-stars. So Werewolf Women of the SS, let's talk about that for a minute. It's a trailer about Nazi exploitation films, I guess, were a thing. I didn't know that those were a thing. I guess maybe in Germany, I'm sure they were. But I'm not familiar with that. And yeah, he plays arguably a somewhat offensive character.
Right.
Fu Manchu. He's dressed up and all those types of things. He has one line of dialogue. I couldn't even make it out.
I'm pretty sure he just says Fu Manchu.
Oh, okay. He just says his name and then he laughs maniacally. He's very cagey in the 10 seconds that we get to see him. But yeah, kind of an odd, strange role. He's introduced as like Nicolas Cage as Fu Manchu in the trailer. He's the only person that's really introduced by name like that. Thoughts, Ryan?
I mean, seemed offensive to me, but I think that was kind of the point.
Yeah.
It was fine. I mean, they just needed him to be really cagey for like 12 seconds. And that was clearly not a problem for him. So,
yeah. It is made by Rob Zombie. The trailer is made by Rob Zombie. His wife, Sherry Moon Zombie, she stars in it alongside Nic Cage there. And that's probably all there is of note in the whole thing. So that's it.
yeah, that's it. Good talk. Okay, that's one movie off our list.
We got it. All right, moving on. All right, so now we got the real movie. The real movie is City of Angels, 1998 film starring, of course, Nicolas Cage, but also Meg Ryan and Andre Braugher and Dennis Franz. That's the top 4 billing people and probably the only 4 people the average person is going to recognize in the film, I would imagine, anyway, at least for most people.
Yeah.
An angel on Earth, a doctor unable to believe, a patient with a secret, a love story made in heaven. Had you seen this before?
So I thought I had, but no.
Me too.
Okay,
That's
so
funny.
that brings me to what I kind of want to talk about something real quick before we get deep into this movie. In the 90s, this is something I've thought about as an adult, and this kind of brought it to light. For some reason, there was like this surge of angel movies.
Hmm.
Is that something you noticed? You had like Michael.
Yeah, Michael.
My parents loved that movie. It is a good movie. It holds up even today. John Travolta. Heart and Souls.
I forgot about that one.
Angels in the Outfield.
Classic. Christopher
Yeah,
Lloyd.
I mean that's just touching the surface. But for some reason, angels were really popular in the 90s.
Yeah. I don't know what that was about. But
It hasn't been the same way since then. We haven't
No.
really gotten a good angel movie in a long time.
No, not at all. Kind of a strange situation. And this one, I really thought I had seen it. I really did. But
It's easy to get confused, right? When you think of like Heart and Souls, there's similar things going on in that movie. There's a lot of angel movies, and it's easy to get confused, I feel like.
mhm. Yeah, it was kind of weird. I even brought up Michael, which is the John Travolta angel film, because I made a comment about how, it's probably a good thing that these angels in City of Angels don't have wings like John Travolta did.
Right. That was actually a great part of that movie. I loved
The
that.
wings. Of
Yeah.
course he did. Yeah, because they were like practical.
They were practical,
Props.
and they were like, they kind of told you how Michael was feeling in any given moment. Either they were extended or they weren't extended, or like the feathers were falling off, things like that. But yeah, this is not Michael. This is a much different movie. So yeah, I guess we can get right into it. I'll say right out of the gate, I did enjoy this movie. I see why people like this movie, but it's definitely not what I expected, and it's definitely not a typical Nic Cage movie. I actually got part of the way through this movie and thought we weren't going to get even a single square
Yeah.
on Cage Bingo.
It's sparse this week for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's cutesy, it's romantic.
But is it really? Because
It loses
it takes
me.
some twists.
Yeah, it does lose me. I
We'll
do
talk
like-
about that for sure. But later in the movie, it's kind of like Return of the King, where there's 17 different possible places it could have ended and been a better movie.
Yeah, yeah.
But
One cool takeaway is the Goo Goo Dolls wrote that song for this movie.
what song?
That song.
I don't know what you're saying.
Don't
Can you sing
think
some
that they'd
lyrics?
Understand that song.
Oh,
Everything's made to be broken.
that's not really singing. That's more speaking. But
I'm
yeah,
not a
I get what
singer.
you're trying to say.
I don't know if you know this about me, but my singing career was short-lived in that it's non-existent.
Yeah, when you were a boy band in the 90s.
Yeah. Mhm.
You were the lone member of a boy band.
I was
Anyway.
the fourth member of Hanson.
Okay, so we get into right in the beginning. I already forgot a lot of this movie, by the way. I remember a good portion of it, but I'm looking at some of these notes going, I don't remember the specifics. I remember the, overall picture, but there's a kid
There's a kid.
and the kid dies,
Yeah.
right?
Really
Right
sad,
out of the gate. This
depressing
isn't the
opening.
first 2 minutes of the movie. My first note was that there was a reference to that famous painting with the fingers touching. Because the kid
Oh,
reaches out his finger
Yeah.
and Nick kind of reaches his finger out.
mhm.
I don't really know what they were going for that. Although in the painting, was it an angel and a human?
Well, it's God.
Oh, it's God. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's what they were going for. It's kind of
The
on the
Sistine
nose
Chapel.
in that case.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's a little on the nose in that case.
I think it's also supposed to show, because this comes in later in the movie, that she sees him. So Seth is an angel.
Right. Seth
Right.
Plate.
And Seth Plate, right? Susan can see him as she is nearing her death.
Yeah. So Nic Cage basically watches this kid die.
Yeah.
And this is kind of just setting up the angel verse for the movie, right? The rules
Yeah.
of the angel verse. You're just kind of getting a crash course in what this world is, because all the different 90s movies, you mentioned Michael and some of the others, they all had different rules for their angels,
Sure. Yeah.
And this one was no different. It had its own things going on. So when Nic Cage is walking away with the kid, he's talking to the kid. The kid's like, are mommy and daddy coming too? And basically they were trying to break Derreck's heart right away. first 5 minutes of the movie, they were trying to make Derek go, I'm done with this movie already. But then apparently Seth, Nic Cage's character, likes to ask kids what they liked best.
Yeah, well, no, he asks
everybody, not just kids. But in this case, we see it in a kid. And this kid said pajamas.
Which she's wearing, by the way.
Me too, kid. I love pajamas are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the opening scene.
There's some heavy stuff in this movie.
There's also some weird consent issues, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
And then we get introduced to Andre Braugher's character, Cassiel.
Yeah.
And so my next note was Captain Holt, because I love him.
He is also an angel.
Yes, he's also an angel. He is also not Captain Holt in this. Captain Holt as an angel, but it's the same actor.
Maybe he becomes Captain Holt when he chooses to fall.
Yeah. Hey, you're getting ahead, okay? Calm down. So we get the first of many scenes where we get the best of the best green screen the 90s had to offer, because apparently one of the rules in this universe is that angels have to sit on the highest possible platform that they can find, overlooking everything. Only some of the time, though. So the rest of the time, they're leering over the backs of people. But much of the time is spent just like sitting on road signs or, skyscrapers or whatever. But in this case, it was a road sign.
Uh-huh. Boy, and just real quick, there are too many, helicopter shots in this movie.
There's a lot of helicopter shots, yeah.
Just too many.
They were big in the 90s. Now it's drone shots. You know what I mean? It's just been one swap to the other at this point.
It's a smaller helicopter.
But yeah, there's some really bad green screen of them sitting on a sign that's not believable at all. It gets worse the further the camera pans out from them, because then they just look like a little cutout on top of the highway. But yeah, they're clearly friends. Let's see, what's my next one? Oh yeah, Nic Cage hugging people and smiling. So I'll say that this Nic Cage role, I've already said this is very different than a lot of his movies. In a lot of ways, I like his performance in this movie better than a lot of his other movies, because he got to be something that we haven't seen yet. And we might not see again in all these movies, is that he's basically a cinnamon roll of a person that has no idea about anything. And he's just really happy. Even though he's dealing with really serious things, like the little girl dying and people dying, he's really happy to be the person that gets to, or the angel that gets to take them to the next stage of their life. He really loves being there for people. And he loves learning about people and just being around them. And so a lot of the movie he spends kind of, I say leering, but I don't mean it in the creepy sense. He's kind of just hanging out behind people with this wide-eyed wonderment and just happiness, even in bad situations for a lot of it. And I thought that was really great, actually. We haven't really gotten to see what Nic Cage would act. This is gonna sound weird, but what Nic Cage would act like if he didn't know anything about the world and was just learning it, like if he was a newborn. This was kind of like if he was playing a newborn baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a really great kind of summation of it. It is a very different role, because typically he's not just the lead in these movies that we're watching, but he's a leader in the movies that we're watching, right? And tends to be a more violent movie, right? Most of his movies include some kind of violence, whether it's gang stuff or whatever. This doesn't really have any of that. He is a completely different type of person here. And it is really cool to see him take on this softer role. He's not trying to be Mr. Tough Guy. He doesn't need to be Mr. Tough Guy. Yeah,
this isn't an action flick. This is... He was brought into this movie, I'm assuming, for his general charisma, because I think I have it in one of my notes later, but this is peak charisma for Nic Cage in this movie. He's just so likable, so lovable. I would even go so far as to say he's just, he's really you feel like you're friends with him in this movie. They brought him in for a very specific reason that was much different than a lot of his other roles, and I liked that. So they gave him a chance, because And all the movies we've watched, like I said, we haven't seen a performance like this, but this was definitely good for him to stretch his acting chops.
I agree. And interesting, apparently Johnny Depp was the first choice for this role.
That would have been a much different movie.
I think so. I think so.
Although, I mean, he can bring some like wide-eyed wonderment too. I mean, as well, he's pretty good at that. I mean, look at Edward Scissorhands. He was kind of a newborn, you know, looking into this world and learning about things. But yeah, I definitely think it would have been a different movie. He has a different kind of charisma, I think, than Nic Cage does. But
yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of that kind of like just Nic Cage hovering over somebody, just smiling and radiating like warmth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot. The first part of this movie, there's a lot of that. So then we get this weird scene on the beach where some of the angels are standing on the roofs of buildings on the beach, and some are on the sand.
Yeah.
And they're listening to basically the music of the sunrise, and they do this apparently every morning.
Every morning.
Although, okay, we see a lot of angels in this movie. It's not all. There's no way that's every angel, because there's not that many angels there realistically.
No, I mean, the way I took it is that angels are kind of stationed to specific geographic areas.
Gotcha. So this is like a regional meeting.
Right, exactly. These are the whatever county or, you know.
Yeah, they're assigned, they use human counties to measure exactly where their lines are.
Yeah, you know, these angels are East LA, these angels are Hollywood.
Right,
you know.
Compton angels.
Right, yeah, Anaheim.
Right. So then we
see a lot of the same ones. They all kind of congregate to the same areas over and over.
That's true.
There's no reason to think that there's not other angels in other cities.
It's also a little unclear about how angels are like assigned to people. It seems like they have some freedom, because you see Nic Cage's character help people that he never sees again in the movie. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting.
The workings of the angels as like as far as like their operations are concerned is completely kind of in the background.
Yeah, and there's so many angels in this movie. If you haven't seen it, that like it's almost like this one angel per person. Like everybody has their own individual angel. There's scenes in like a library where every single person in the library has an angel standing over them. So when we talk about these angels, there's a lot of these angels. It's not just a few covering an area. It's almost every single person has their own.
It kind of reminded me of the whole Agent Smith thing in Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions.
Because they all wear the same thing.
Yeah, they're wearing these black clothes and these black long, jackets and everything. They all look, and they're all peering out together. They move kind of like as one.
Yeah. Yeah, like a hive mind type of situation.
Exactly.
So then we get, after the weird angel gathering on the beach, we get our introduction to Meg Ryan in this movie. Mm-hmm. Maggie.
Dr. Maggie.
Okay. I don't think she's actually earned her doctorate, so I will not be referring to Meg Ryan as doctor, but, honorary doctor maybe.
No, Dr. Maggie, the character.
The character is Dr. Maggie, yes, who has earned her doctorate, I believe.
I hope so.
So they have this patient in there, and this patient asks to see her before the surgery.
Yep.
Like the nurse makes it in, it's a big thing. He wants to see you before the surgery. So Meg Ryan just walks into this room, stares at him for like 2 minutes, doesn't say anything, and walks out. But the way she's framed from his perspective, because you kind of see her from his perspective, the person that's getting worked on or getting ready to get surgery, and it's kind of, she's like backlit like an angel, which is a little, again, on the nose, but even though she's not an angel in this movie, so I guess not really on the nose, but they try to use a lot of like heavenly imagery.
It's a little heavy-handed. I'm not really sure what that scene was for, other than
she just stares at him.
I think it's meant to increase the weight of the situation given what happens.
I guess.
It forces her to be even more connected to this person, which, if you talk to surgeons there, or anything about surgeons, they tend to want to be somewhat detached, because it is very hard, right? If you feel every death like it's a family member or a friend, right? Like that's a good way to break down and everything like that. So I think that was supposed to bring her closer to the situation.
Right. I agree. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of anyway, because it was a weird scene without, if that's not the case.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, we get into the surgery room where she's performing the surgery. And so the rule about angels in this movie, which they already kind of defined by this point in the movie, but we didn't really touch on, was that angels choose whether they're seen by people and by who at any given time. So in the scene, we see the audience sees Nic Cage's character standing there watching, but nobody else in this operating room has any idea that he's there.
Right.
And so he, at one point, I think things start going south, and so she's doing like CPR, not really CPR. She basically cuts his chest open and starts like squeezing his heart.
She's massaging it. Yeah.
Yeah. And he walks up and like looks at her, and she looks and appears to stare directly at him, and that freaks him out.
Did you understand it that when he chooses to be seen, it's only for specific people? Because does that mean then, like, when Meg Ryan's like hanging out with them and stuff like that later, that like people think she's talking to nobody?
Maybe. I mean, I don't think it's very clear.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so then the guy dies, and Nick accompanies him away, assumedly.
Right. Yeah.
My next note was, I hope when I die, Nic Cage can accompany me to whatever is next. I don't really believe personally in an afterlife, but if there is one, this movie convinced me that that's how I would want to be walked, because he just was, I've already said it, we both already said it, but he was really delightful in this movie in terms of like his just sheer charisma and likability. So, which you don't always get that.
No.
Yes, you don't always get that from Nick. A lot of his movies, he's very abrasive or, just not the nicest guy. But in this movie, he seems like just a really genuine, nice guy. Like, a cinnamon roll that you just want to hug. But yeah, so that was my next note. Yeah. And I still feel that way. I put in my next note was, is hanging out above buildings a job requirement for angels?
Yes.
Because there's like literally there's panning shots, helicopter shots, like Derreck talked about, over the city, like in the evening, and it's all angels on every rooftop. You don't see any on the street, but they're all on all the rooftops, just like hanging out.
I guess it was supposed to represent the fact that they would have wings theoretically, right? And they could fly, and so they're higher up, or they're a higher.
I just took it as they could teleport. They could teleport wherever they want. Because in the movie, you do see him like appear in different places very quickly, and wings wouldn't necessarily be able to make you move that fast.
That's true. And Casil makes a comment about, or maybe it was Nathaniel makes a comment about how they can move at the speed of light.
Oh, did you say that? I missed that one.
One of them does. I forget.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a scene shortly after this where Meg Ryan is in the locker room. Oh, I think she's in a locker room. I don't know, but basically another doctor comes in, and it turns out they're sleeping together.
Jordan Ferris.
Yes, that they're sleeping together, and Nic Cage's character's just kind of standing there watching the drama between the two of them. Because now that she's looked at him, even though she wasn't actually looking at him or seeing him, well, which is actually, that's kind of ambiguous. I don't think she did.
She didn't see him. I don't think she saw him.
He's convinced that she did, and so he starts following her around, which is a little questionable, but it was the 90s. It was a different time. And then we see him go to the library, or she goes to the library, and he shows up there, and there's just angels everywhere in this library. People are sitting at the tables reading books, and the angels just hanging out over them, watching them read, including Seth. Nic Cage's character is just kind of wandering through the library, and he one guy leaves a book there by Ernest Hemingway, and he steals that book, I guess, from the library and gives it to Maggie. At some point, it ends up on her nightstand.
That's all very unclear to me too, because that means, so what then? Was is he able to incorporate that into like his kind of veil that no one else can see through, or is there just like a book floating down the street?
I
Like,
mean, maybe they can move at the speed of light, so maybe you can't see the book floating.
maybe that's what happened. Yeah, I don't know. It's left very wide open.
Then we get some Ben and Jerry's product placement with there's another guy that is getting surgery.
Oh, right, Nathaniel.
And he's just stuffing his face with Ben and Jerry's ice cream. And he tries to, when the nurse and doctor, or when his wife and the doctor start coming in, he hides it under his blanket, but then it falls out, of course. And they're like, why are you eating ice cream? You should be getting better or whatever. I guess he's getting a heart valve transplant, something like that.
Because they had to cancel the procedure because she's all shook. The big thing in the beginning of this movie is that Meg Ryan's character, Dr. Rice, is kind of shaken from losing a patient on her table. She doesn't lose people on her table. That's something she says multiple times.
Right. And she's obsessed with the fact that she did everything right.
And it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So she's kind of at a loss as to why the person died. She doesn't understand why they died. Because she did everything right. There's nothing went wrong. There's no reason why it should have happened.
And so she's a huge wreck. So Jordan Ferris, and because he's like on the board or committee or something, whatever, reviewing things, they postponed her next procedure, which is for Nathaniel Messenger, whatever his
name Messinger.
Is.
They have a point in the movie where they say that it's a hard G because somebody calls a messenger and he says, no, it's a hard G.
Well, that would be a hard G would be messenger.
Oh, they say it's not a hard G. That's something like that. It's Messinger.
It's Messinger. Okay.
Yes, because messenger was a little too on the nose. So we get an introduction to a dumpster baby at this point, which reminded me of Always Sunny for my Always Sunny fans out there. But
why did it have to be like? There is no reason that this has to be a dumpster baby because it doesn't mean anything.
It just makes it more sad. They were trying to hit every emotion that they possibly could in this movie. Well,
it can't just
they were trying to hit
baby.
Pure sadness in
like,
this
why
movie.
can't it just be a sad baby? We can't just feel bad for the baby.
Well, they want you to feel really sad. So yeah, she goes to like this nursery, which is apparently a place she goes to kind of just be with her emotions because she's surrounded by newness and innocence, I guess.
Well,
and she's friends with the nurse in there.
From Miss Messinger.
Right. Who is harassing her about why the surgery didn't happen and everything else. But then there's this baby in there that's constantly crying. And her friend, that's also a nurse or a doctor, I can't remember.
She's a doctor.
She's a doctor. She's a pediatrician, is in there. And this baby just won't stop crying. And they can't figure out why. And then she goes to this whole story about how it was found in a dumpster and abandoned. And it just makes you feel even worse. And the baby's all red and like crying all the time. Yeah, it was sad.
Depressing.
Big time. And then my next note says, "Are you in despair?" In quotes, because I think Nic Cage says that to somebody.
I don't remember.
I think he says that this is the first time that he talks to Maggie.
Oh, when he reveals himself for the first time?
Yes, I believe.
Yeah.
Because he's talking to Maggie. It's kind of hard to describe, but like I said, like a newborn would, like doesn't really understand, like he understands people, but he doesn't really understand the human world.
Well, he doesn't really understand emotion. He doesn't know.
Yeah. Because he doesn't feel
touch or taste.
Well, he says he doesn't feel, like it's implied he doesn't feel emotion, but he feels love and happiness. So, I mean, I guess he does feel emotion, but maybe not. He doesn't really feel sadness or despair or, any kind of negative emotions. He just knows that they exist.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it was a good, well-delivered line by Nic Cage when he asked if they're in despair. There's another good line that I have for my next note. Some things are true whether you believe in them or not. People choose what they believe.
So this is just a funny personal thing. This weekend I watched this, and I also coincidentally watched Dogma, in which Chris Rock has the exact same line.
What year did Dogma come out?
2001.
So after this movie, for sure.
I think 99. I'm sorry. 99.
1 year after this movie. So they didn't take inspiration from this movie, because there's no way they would have seen this movie and then written Dogma and then filmed Dogma and still had it come out less than a year later.
Right. So
but that is funny.
yeah.
I
Had an
have
oddly religious weekend.
apparently. I'm trying to read my next note. It says awkward Nic Cage watching bath. Oh, yes. Okay. So she takes a bath. It shows her at her house and she's like spread eagle in this bath and just like seductively like rubbing herself. Not necessarily her womanly parts, but like her upper shoulder area. She's like just kind of rubbing her
It's
skin.
a sensual scene.
Yes.
Yes.
And this is something we also haven't established is that angels can hear people's thoughts.
Yeah. In
if they
any
choose
language,
to.
by the way.
And dogs' thoughts, we find out later. But yes, they can hear everybody's thoughts. And so Nic Cage, in this point, I would say, is leering in the negative way over her. He's followed her to her house, and she's having this private bath and thinking about how hot Nic Cage was. Right? Like, she's thinking about how mysterious he is and how hot that is and blah, blah, blah. And it's just kind of implied that, you know, this is a very personal, private moment.
It's just so, it's very
And he's
awkward.
watching.
He's watching it, but like the way they meet is also very strange because like he meets her in the hotel late at night after visiting hours. She thinks he's a friend of Messinger, but he's obvious, like, but he's not. Like, it's just, it's all very, I don't understand why she trusts him so quickly, unless it's just supposed to be, well, he's an angel, so it's just innate that she should trust him. But I feel like she's a little too trusting here.
So I don't, if you're a listener to this, you should know that Derek and I did a podcast before called Screen Heroes. And we have a group on Facebook called Screen Heroes group, forum, whatever, where we share memes and stuff, you know, just fun to discuss movies and TV shows, things like that. And something that got shared earlier this week was talking about how good-looking people get away with so much more in movies than they should in real life. And that there was a Danny DeVito rule, which is that if you replace the main character with Danny DeVito and whatever that person was doing is now creepy, then that means that whatever that person should not have gotten away with whatever they were doing. And this movie has several moments like that, where if you replace Nic Cage with Danny DeVito, it would be way creepier and way worse. And he should not, and including, she would not have trusted him that quickly if this was Danny DeVito.
It just seems
You know what I'm saying?
DeVito.
He embraces, he literally did a movie called Twins where he quotes saying that he's the leftover crap after Julius got all the good stuff. So I think that he's okay with this. Everybody keeps saying it's mean to Danny DeVito. That's what the role he's been playing for 30 years or more.
I know, but he's a good guy.
You can absolutely be a good guy and be, you know, not the most handsome person in the world. Right?
Fair enough.
Nobody's saying that. I'm sure he's a wonderful human being. I certainly love his work, but it's, you know, just a way of visualizing something that's a lot of people can visualize, a specific person. But yes, in this case, I think that he, first of all, is the 90s and rom-coms, which is what this seems like it is at this point in the movie. The men in rom-coms in the 90s did a lot of things that should never have happened, and they got away with a lot more, and women trusted them immediately. It's kind of a trope of the 90s, is that, you know, so I didn't have as big of a problem with that because, you know, I lived in the 90s and I saw those movies, so I understand that this is how it was then. And yet nowadays I would require more explanation as to why she's trusting this person. But
yeah,
given the time frame that this movie was made in, I get it. You know, he also is just a really charismatic guy. And even in real life, people that have high charisma like that, people will just flock to and give them more information than maybe they deserve to have.
That's true.
I've seen it happen. And so, and I'm sure you have too. So yeah, I mean, it's not 100% believable, but I could see why they went that way with it. Anyway, my next note is rooftop basketball, because there's a scene where there's apparently on the roof, there's a basketball court of a hospital.
But it's on the helicopter pad. The emergency helicopter medical
There's a basketball
pad.
court, yeah.
They've got a hoop.
So she's out there with the guy, the doctor that she's boning. And yeah, they're having a discussion. And my next note was smoking doctor, because this was the 90s and everybody had to smoke, except Nic Cage. He didn't smoke in this movie, but
he does in one scene.
Does he?
In the diner. There's a diner scene where he's sitting next to some guy and they're both smoking.
I must have been writing a note when that scene happened because I don't remember that one. But yeah, there's smoking. We talk about that in the 90s and 80s movies that we review on the show a lot.
The dude smoking while playing basketball. It's just so,
as a doctor. He's a doctor.
Yeah.
Surrounded by other doctors, having sex with a third doctor. I mean, it's all, like he should know better at this point. So yeah, then we get the next Nic Cage library scene. And at this point, it's revealed that Maggie read the whole book that he left on her nightstand, that she didn't think was weird at all, that Ernest Hemingway's book just showed up on her nightstand.
Well, no, because she thought that the doctor, Jordan Ferris, left it.
Right, but so he says that he didn't.
Then she's confused at that point. But
yeah, so she's in the Ernest Hemingway section of the library.
Well, so he goes, this just drove me nuts for some reason. So she goes in there and she brings the book to the front desk and she's like, can you tell me who checked this out? And the guy's like, well, I can't tell you who, but I can tell you when, whatever.
As if that's helpful.
Right?
But she wants that information, apparently.
And he goes, give me 5 minutes. And then he scans the book. Now, look, I know it's 1998, but what's taking 5 minutes after scanning the book? It's one thing if he was busy and he was going to get to the book. But
Derreck clearly never worked on a database in the 90s.
I checked out books from school in the 90s. You scanned the barcode and that's it. It took 2 seconds.
Yeah, but he wasn't checking a book out. He was trying to get information about the history of that particular book.
The last
had to search a database.
That was it. For 5 minutes, I don't buy it.
Well, he's taking a break too. Give him a break. He's a library guy. He's working hard. Anyway, he reveals himself to her again, and she asks him a bunch of personal questions. At some point, she asks him what he does, like for a job, and he just says, "I'm a messenger of God." And that's okay. That's perfect. She's okay with that answer. It's just all good.
It's all good.
Yeah. And so, yeah, my next note is that there's some weird consent issues in this movie. So something that's shown throughout the movie to this point is not only like reading people's thoughts, which brings up a consent issue right there because, people are not consenting to you thinking about or listening to what they're thinking about. That's an invasion of privacy. But then also the angels touch people and give them like warm feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so it brings up some weird issues throughout this movie where Nic Cage is touching Meg Ryan's character.
I mean, this is complicated because they're not human. They're supposed to be there to help guide us, right? The whole guardian angel concept, right? They're guiding us, they're steadying us, and they're leading us, quote unquote, to heaven when we die. So I'm not sure that fits in the normal category of if it was you or me performing those actions.
Well, but okay, there's a scene later where Meg Ryan is lying in bed.
Oh, he takes it too far for sure.
Yes,
but I think,
and she's like, just stay here until I sleep, and he takes that as let's full on spoon, and like has her like completely wrapped in it. Yeah. He's the big spoon, and he's like rubbing her. Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily what she was talking about, but
he takes it too far. But I think the general, like what the other angels are doing, like in the library or whatever, or like in the convenience store when the
they're like touching people's shoulders.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, I'm talking about consent issues specifically with Nic Cage's character.
Oh, yeah, he goes too far.
Yeah, in several scenes. And we haven't gotten that far in the movie yet, but yeah, that stuff like that does happen later and it gets a little weird. My next note is grocery shopping with an angel. I don't remember what that's in reference to.
She goes, he wants to do something with her. And she's like, well, what do you want to do? And he's like, anything. And then they cut to her.
Oh, they go to a market. Yeah. Like, have you noticed there's been a lot of grocery shopping scenes in Nic Cage movies?
There have been, huh? That's
seriously.
Yeah.
Like I remember that one where there's like the shootout in front of the grocery store while they're grocery shopping. Remember when he was playing like an ex? Was that Dog Eat Dog?
That was Dog Eat Dog.
There's been a lot of shopping scenes in these
Dog
movies.
Eat Dog, of course, you've got the one in Las Vegas.
And you've got the one in, what's the one where he's Secret Service?
Secret Service. Oh, yeah.
The hilarious one where she's like, what, the peas are...
Oh, my God. Why can't I remember the name of that movie? Guarding Tess.
Guarding Tess, yeah. There's a lot of grocery. Maybe we need to add that as another swappable tile in our bingo cards.
Nick goes grocery shopping.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, it seems to happen a lot. Okay.
And he wants her to explain what the pear tastes like.
Yes. Which is, yeah. How do you explain taste to somebody that can't taste? Or how do you explain smell to somebody that can't smell? You know what I mean? Like it's tough. So then they like continue this date and she takes him to the lab of the hospital and is trying to teach science.
Yeah.
She's trying to take his blood, first of all, which is not something you do on like a first date, but it reminded me of that scene in Parks and Rec with the guy that's like, I'm offering you a free sonogram or whatever it was. Not a sonogram,
scan,
but
yeah.
body scan. Yeah. Yeah. This would normally cost you thousands of dollars. You got a nice oven in there, you know, like,
oh my God.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of. She tries to take his blood so they can look at it under a microscope. But yeah, she's trying to teach science to a heavenly body, essentially, which seems a little weird, but you know, then she gets called out for an emergency or something and he disappears again. I did think it was weird. My next note is that she doesn't think it's odd that a grown-ass man is asking questions that a child would ask.
Yeah, it is a little strange because she doesn't believe that he's an angel at this point yet, right? But she's fine with all of the questioning. And that's kind of what goes back to what I was saying earlier, like how quickly she's trusting and stuff. Like he just keeps popping up places when she's there. She never questions that. He's asking these extremely strange questions for an adult to ask. Even for a kid to ask, it's a little strange to ask some of these questions. And she's just rolling with it.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue that she's at a point in her life where she's looking for something. And so maybe she's willing to, like, you know, there's a lot of people out there that will see red flags and just ignore them because they want something. But that is possible, that person.
She's with Dr.
But she isn't satisfied. It's shown that several times that she's not, you know, satisfied by their relationship. Yeah. So my next note is random guy talks to Angel. I don't know, remember what that was in reference to. Oh, okay. So this is the first time. So Seth shows up into Messenger's room, and we don't know who he is at this point.
No, he's just this dude who got his heart operated on.
Yeah, when she leaves the science lab, she's going to go talk to him or something. And so he follows her because that's what he does this whole movie is follows her around. And when she leaves, he touches the guy's chest and he gets like this satisfied look on his face. And then when he pulls his hand away, he's like, I know you're there. And so at this point, we don't have any clue that this guy's important to the story or anything. So it just seemed like a random guy talking to the angel. Mm-hmm. And he thought it was weird, but I don't think he talks to him at this point. It's later in the movie that he makes himself visible. And then, yeah, there's a scene, I don't remember exactly what happened, where the other doctor that she's banging is just like a huge jerk.
Is that the tick scene?
Could be, yeah.
Because he shows up at their house, or she's late. She shows up late, and he's like got them all.
Oh yeah, that's what it was.
And the dog's got a tick, and they have that whole conversation. And yeah, he's kind of standoffish. He's kind of short with her, but she's also being kind of weird at the same time. And so
yeah, she's like receptive to it. Like he's being a jerk, but she seems like it's not a turn off.
No, yeah,
which is weird. And then they like have sex, or it's like implied sex. And Nic Cage is there. He's there during the tick scene and like for this whole argument. Mm-hmm. And so my next note was, does he watch them have sex?
It certainly seemed like it.
Which is weird. Yeah, then my next note was Messenger, not Messenger, used to be an angel, because it's just a little on the nose that would be his name. And I should have probably caught that right away when they said his name. So yeah, it's revealed that he used to be an angel, and he goes through this whole spiel with Seth, talking about how, you know, just like God gave humans free will, he gave angels free will too, except that he doesn't tell them they have free will or give them any information about it at all. So unless you're just like, I think I'm gonna become a fallen angel and a human and do some arbitrary thing, which in this case is literally falling.
Yeah, it's unclear how like he found out about it.
Right. You don't find out about it unless you're told about it by somebody. There's no like angel rumors
Yeah.
that's, are passed around or anything. So yeah, he decided to become human because he fell in love with somebody, and so
Honestly,
now he feels.
his plot is like the most interesting part of the movie for me.
Yeah, for sure. He's definitely a really interesting character in the movie.
Yeah.
And then my next note is skinny dipping. I don't remember when that happened.
Yeah, so Seth takes Nathaniel, Mr. Messenger, out
Oh, yeah.
a day on the town, and they go freaking everywhere. And the whole time he's wearing his hospital gown. The whole time they're like at a diner, so maybe an awkward diner scene.
It wasn't
perhaps.
awkward though.
I thought it was a little bit. I mean, the dude's sitting there in his hospital robes.
I mean, I guess you could make an argument for that. We didn't mark that one off, but it wouldn't have made any difference for us on ours anyway. But
in Cageo.
Yeah.
But yeah, they end up at he asks if the angels still gather at sunrise, and Seth goes every day.
And he wants to go. Yeah.
And so he knows that he can't see the angels and he can't hear the sun because they can hear the sun. He goes, but know what I can do? I can feel this. And he like takes his shoes off and he's in the sand and he goes and he gets naked and starts swimming in the water. Like, I don't know, a day or two after he's had literal open heart surgery.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty big deal. There was a moment where I thought he was going to die in the water.
Yeah, me too.
On the beach, at least.
Yeah, me too.
Because like the swimming
sequences go on. Because that would have also explained why Nic Cage's character was there with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would have worked.
They could have made it seem like it's just Seth choosing to follow these people, but that it's actually like a fate, that he's fated to follow these people, even if he thinks he's in control of it.
Right. Yeah, that would have been really interesting.
That would probably make for a more interesting movie. But yeah. Yeah, my next note is that Cage is at peak charisma in this movie, which we've already talked about. But I think somewhere in here it really started to set in how like top of the world. I mean, this was late 90s. This is when he did his Holy Trinity of movies.
Yep.
This like he was on top of the world at this point.
Yeah.
He was getting ready to do Superman, I think, around this time.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, he was doing well at this point. But yeah, peak charisma. Yes, my next note is that CGI is real bad. I don't remember where they were. Oh, it was like a 10-gallon hat or something.
The two of them are sitting on top of like this cowboy sign.
Yeah, which is like a hat.
It looked really bad.
It looked really horrible, yeah. And then he meets a dog and he talks to a dog. Whose dog was that? Was that her dog?
I don't remember which dog he talks to.
There's a dog and it like loves him right away, and he tells the person like I think it's Maggie's dog, and he like tells Maggie that the dog is happy and something else.
Yeah,
which was interesting.
Dog.
Yeah. I have Nic Cage makeout sesh for my next note.
Yeah, that's some hardcore kissing right there.
Yeah,
it
was.
I was expecting, so I rented the movie on Amazon, and because that was just the easiest option for me. And it says, nudity and sexual something or others. And I was like, oh, okay. So maybe we're going to get, Nic Cage butt again or something like that or whatever. And when we're doing, there's like the sex scene, there's like a sex scene and they're doing the big makeout stuff. And really the only nudity in the movie is Dennis Franz's butt.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a side shot of Nick, but I don't know if that counts or not.
Oh, you can see it though.
Can you? It was a little fast and I didn't roll it
We'll
back,
talk about that. We'll talk about that. I rolled it back. No, just kidding. I didn't.
Freeze frame. Enhance.
So I don't remember what she was doing in the scene, but Maggie she drives a Saab, and at some point she parks it somewhere and just leaves the windows down and just goes inside. And as a car guy, that really bothers me. I guess I grew up in a different place different where I was taught to always make sure your car is locked and your windows are up when you leave. And so it really bothered me that she would, I guess she's a doctor and she's got money. So, if somebody steals her shit, she can just buy another one.
Maybe it's such a bad part of town that if you leave your windows down, then at least they won't break your windows.
I mean, that's true. I mean, yeah, that's fair. So there's a scene where, so after the surgery, Messinger's wife plans a party to celebrate. And she invites Maggie. Yep. Who invites Seth,
because she thinks Seth and Messenger are friends because
Right.
that's how they were introduced. Like that's how she
Right.
thought.
She saw him outside his room.
Right.
So they go to the party, and man, this is so awkward. I don't know. It was awkward to me. Maybe it wasn't to you, but there's this kid
Oh,
that is, I like in Seth's face. Like when I say in his face, it's like an inch away from kissing him on the mouth, like for an extended period of time.
she can see him.
She can see him, but everybody can see him at this point because he's not making himself.
Well, but she sees. What I mean by that is she can tell that he's different.
Sure, but she's like right up in his grill, and no other kid in the movie does that. So I don't know if this is just a kid with some sort of spatial awareness disorder, or
I think it's Messenger's kid.
So it's half Angel.
Or
there's going to be a spin-off where this is Constantine or something. A kid grows up
angels,
to be, yeah,
descendant of angels.
Somebody takes a picture of him at this party.
Yeah.
And like with a Polaroid camera, and when the camera develops it, he just looks like the sun.
There's like a huge flash there. I was curious how they were going to handle that. I wasn't sure if he was just going to be like he wasn't even there, like a vampire type situation, or pure light. They went with pure light.
So at this point, he starts talking to the kid, and he hangs out with the kid, and so I checked off the befriends a minor. At this point, you could have already done that. I feel like in the beginning of the movie when he walks with the kid,
I was on the fence about it then.
It was a pretty quick scene. This one was more of an extended scene where he definitely seems like he was getting along with the kid. So yeah, we're checking that box at this point.
That counts.
So at her house, Maggie's house, Seth is there with her. They go to her house after the party, and she asks him. She's kind of figuring out that something's going on with him at this point, even though she's a doctor and is very smart. She still hasn't figured it out up to this point because she has a conversation with Messenger at the party, and he says something about how he hasn't told her yet or something like that. And so she's starting to figure stuff out.
He tells a different story. He says, that he does construction, and Seth works with me, and he's like a courier for us. Like the story starts to unravel, but come on, she's an analytical, logical driven doctor in this world. So her first instinct isn't going to believe that this dude's a legit angel.
I guess. But anyway, she asks him his last name, and he looks at a plate. It says plate. So that's the level we're at with this movie at this point.
But then you have the knife scene. This is the knife scene.
Oh, yes. I don't think I have a note on that one.
The knife scene was kind of cool. So he's helping her make a salad. She asks him to cut up the lettuce. And he, nips the finger.
Yeah.
And she kind of notices.
But he doesn't actually bleed it. Like the camera does some weird work where it looks like it kind of pushes the finger down or something, but it doesn't actually cut it.
It was kind of cool. And so she then actually straight up tries to hurt him with a knife.
She like cuts his hand or tries to cut his hand.
He's trying to hide it and stuff like that, and there's no blood or anything like that. And she starts to freak out.
Yes.
Which I think is a fair response. If you find a person who's seemingly human who can't bleed, that's weird.
Yeah. So yeah, my next note, I don't really know why I needed to state this, but the angel in love with human. So I guess maybe at this point it was kind of shown that he was really in love with her. He wasn't just like obsessed with her or whatever.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, Angel by Sarah McLachlan starts playing, which is a little on the nose.
There's and my dogs 4 Angel songs in this movie.
My dogs started getting depressed hearing it because, they're used to seeing the commercials on TV with like the really sad dogs that need to be adopted playing that song.
Mm.
But my dogs are adopted and are rescues. So eat it, Sarah McLachlan.
Sam.
Just kidding. I'm sure she's wonderful.
And mine needs to join the podcast. So.
That's right. Mine don't because they're noisy.
Well, my dog's
so this is something maybe you can shed some light on for me. So early in the movie, I noticed this, but it kind of kept going. I didn't know if it was like just like something I was reading too much into early on, but it was kind of a thread that carried through the whole movie. So in this movie, the angels all wear black.
Yes.
Like trench coats, not really trench coats, but kind of like trench coat styled, like velour, velvety coats. And then a lot of the humans that they interact with, including Maggie, are wearing white. The majority of the movie.
Yeah.
Maggie's wearing like a lab coat, but then even a lot of the clothes that she chooses are white. Mm-hmm. So you think there's anything that they're trying to say thematically with the color choices there, because it doesn't seem like just coincidence to me that they would put a heavenly body, an angel that's normally portrayed as wearing white, into black, and then put the humans that they're trying to help in white.
So I kind of took it as twofold. One, there's just the cinematography standpoint of wanting it to be starkly clear who an angel is and who a human is, because they have all of these sweeping shots, right, all over the city, all over these different locations, and there's all of these angels, and it's always extremely clear who the angels are. So I think that's number one, just at a very base level. Number two is, I think the color, the specific colors are supposed to represent Nic Cage's view of the, I guess, universe, for lack of a better term here. You know, the grass is always greener concept. He sees humans as something to strive for, something to be, something that he feels is missing in his own life. And so that's like this beacon that is kind of calling to him. Gotcha.
Well, I had similar thoughts, so I'm glad it wasn't just me that thought that was interesting, but that was kind of a cool little detail. Definitely. So then we get to the stormy night, which we've already kind of talked about, where there were some consent issues there, where she like wants him to be there, and she says, you know, don't leave me, and then he crawls into bed with her and just big spoons her and like rubs her all over, but he's not in the sense that like she can't see him.
Well, because they have this big blow up, and she says she doesn't want to see him anymore, but he still kind of hangs out, and she can sense that he's there sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. And so that gets kind of weird. It's like they
more weird consent issues. Yeah.
But they, you know, still text each other.
and he still fondles her at night.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's cuddling, Ryan. It's just cuddling.
Not if one person doesn't want it to be, then
it's over the clothes cuddling. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's sexual assault, is I think what that comes down to, if one person isn't like saying, do that to me. Anyway, so she figures out at some point that baby from earlier, the dumpster baby, she figures out what's wrong with it, and she runs in to tell this other doctor that was apparently too stupid to figure it out what the problem was. Well, and
she has her first good night of sleep.
Yes, because she was being big spooned by Nic Cage, which I think would help anybody have a good night of sleep. But yeah, so she tells this lady, and the lady's like, "Oh my God, I think you're right," and they rush the baby to surgery. So more depressing baby surgery.
Basically, the baby's nasal passages were blocked, so the kid couldn't sleep because it couldn't breathe.
Yeah, I know that apparently requires nasal surgery to.
It's a little weird that nobody in the pediatric maternity ward figured that out.
You would think people that would deal with babies day in and day out would have some idea of that, but apparently none of them have ever heard of that before. She had to scour textbooks to like learn that one thing. And then the jerk doctor proposes to her. So that's a thing. But it doesn't really show what she says, does it?
Well, yeah. So he proposes in the locker room, in the women's locker
really
room.
Romantic.
No ring. And he just talked about how they can finally go up to her uncle's place in Tahoe.
He seems kind of oblivious to the fact that she's feeling like this is not fulfilling. So to be fair, she does still act like she likes him quite a bit. So it's a little unclear what's going on.
She's clearly having a tough time, and he doesn't really seem to notice all that much. But she says that she'll think about it.
Yeah. So at this point, Nick is thinking of falling.
Because he's pretty sure that she's going to marry him. Marry Ferris.
And we'd already seen or heard that Messinger was a fallen angel. So at this point, I started to wonder of the logistics of how this works. Because, so let's say Seth falls, right? Decides to be a fallen angel. How does he then get a social security number? How does he get any kind of identity?
He doesn't.
So Messinger has no health insurance because he doesn't exist, and he's still getting treated at a hospital, and
he might have health insurance at this point because here's the way he explains it is that it's like impossible to get a job because you have no history. You're not like a person, but because he was an angel, he's not afraid of heights. And so he didn't mind doing the really high steel beam work on skyscrapers during construction.
Sure, but who's going to hire you without a social security number? I mean, in the 90s, things were different, I guess.
Blue-collar, hard-working jobs like that hire a lot of people, no questions asked, if they're willing to put in the work. In fact, a lot of the backbone of our economy is built on those exact people. And we also don't know how long Nathaniel has been human.
Right. That's fair.
So like that's also kind of unclear is how young was he when this happened, and so when did he start doing this stuff and things of that nature. There are ways to get, a social security number and stuff like that.
So you're saying that these angels, when they fall, they go through back channels and like illegal dealings to get a social security number. That's your theory.
I'm saying it's an option. We also don't know, that has this happened a bunch of times, or
does God provide them with a social security number when they fall?
Maybe
they woke up with a wallet and it has like a new driver's license and stuff like that in there.
Part of your severance package when you the angel group. But it also depends like what country you're in too. I assume
that's true. Like if they fall
all over the world.
Yeah, that's true. My next note is a quote. Meg Ryan tells Nic Cage that you are so beautiful. She says to Nic Cage.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a delightful thing. She was speaking for the whole audience on that. And so, then he decides to fall. And my next note was that, man, they take Fallen Angel really seriously because he literally just goes to a high place and like falls off.
Yeah, it's a literal falling.
Yeah. And then after he falls, he's like bleeding and stuff. And we start to get our first hints of caginess in this movie. Because he starts laughing and just like he's bloody and stuff. And these other construction workers that are up there just making fun of him because he fell onto like a scaffolding. Mm-hmm. He fell like 20 feet onto a scaffolding. And they call him Sleeping Beauty and tell him to wake up instead of like calling for an emergency service because he's unconscious on their scaffolding and not supposed to be there.
Yeah, they just want him to leave.
Yeah. But he just starts doing some cagey stuff, laughing. And one of the construction workers is Nick Offerman.
How fun was that? He gets a line and everything. 2 shots, 1 line.
I know. He was I would like to ask him about this role just to see like what his thoughts were, because this is really early on in his career, probably one of his first like real roles. And so I'm sure he has some fun memories of this movie.
It's a great exchange because Nick is like, is this blood? And Nick Offerman goes, is it red?
Yeah. That was good. Are you looking up Nick Offerman on IMDb now? I knew it.
I'm just curious. I like this kind of stuff. So it was not his first credit by any means. He had 4 things before this, but it was definitely his first like big like movie that he was in. He had been in an episode of ER and Kablam, which was an old Nickelodeon
show.
Yeah. So there you go.
Nice. So it was definitely like his first big role, especially with like a big starring actor
on like a major film and everything.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get Nick dances off of our Cage Bingo. He starts dancing in the street. That should be another one that we need to add to our Cage Bingo, is that he's just walking or doing something in the middle of the street instead of on the sidewalk. Because he's done that in a lot of movies too.
That's funny.
But yeah, he just starts dancing in the middle of the street. Mm-hmm. So it's like kind of one of our only cagey things to happen in this movie, unfortunately, along with that laugh.
Yeah.
And then he gets robbed. I don't know. It just says Angel gets robbed. So I don't remember
so
what that was.
He's trying to get to Tahoe, because that's where he thinks Dr. Rice went to go get married to Jordan Ferris. And so he's trying to get a ride, and he's hitchhiking, and this car pulls up, and he just goes over, he goes, hello. And then they all get out of the car and beat the shit out of him and steal his boots because he doesn't have anything else.
Yeah. Sad scene.
Mm-hmm.
So my next note is Basset Hound. Because apparently it showed a Basset Hound.
The trucker. Yeah, there's a trucker who gives him a ride that has a Basset Hound. Yeah,
and I like Basset Hounds. They're one of my favorite dogs, so I always love it when I see them somewhere. And then my next note is So Much Rain.
Yeah, it rains.
Apparently there's a lot of rain.
Well, I think, the angel world is sad to have lost one of their own.
Sure, so God makes it rain.
That's right.
And then I have such a 90s soundtrack for my next note because it was a very, very 90s. Lots of big hit 90s songs.
As long as Angel, the word Angel.
Yeah, was it anywhere somewhere in the title? Yeah, or in the song? Yeah. So he's basically, because he knows that she was supposed to be getting married to this other guy, and that they're going to Tahoe. He's headed to Tahoe to try and stop her or whatever, see what's happened at the very least. So he shows up to Tahoe, and we see her alone in this cabin. So my next note was, where's the boyfriend she's supposed to be there with? And it's explained that he didn't come. She came alone.
That's a nice house, by the way.
Very nice. She's a doctor.
Well, it's not hers, it's her uncle's.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And so then we get the fallen angel sex scene, which is really weird. Like, they're like, it's not missionary. They're like facing each other, but sitting down. I don't know if there's a name for that. I'm sure there is. But she's like, it looks like she's like jerking him off at first. And then she like moves in closer. And he like does this lip bite. Did you notice that? At one point he like bites his lip, like, when women do it seductively. Apparently he thought he could get away with it, and it was kind of sexy, to be honest. But I mean, he does this really seductive lip bite looking at her when she like mounts him. Mm-hmm. It was funny. It was just a really weird sex scene. It's like she's teaching a 5-year-old to have sex, essentially.
I mean, that's a creepy way of putting it, but sure.
Well, how else do you describe it? Somebody that's completely has no idea, even though he's watched it happen at this point.
I would have said it's closer to Forrest Gump, for example.
Okay, sure. Yeah. More like a learning disabled person is what you're saying.
He's an adult is all.
Yeah, I think either one is equally problematic to say. How about that?
Fair enough.
So yeah, then we get a post-coital mountain viewing cuddle where they're just like hanging out on the balcony staring at the mountains after making love.
And then she makes a comment about how they have the rest of their lives to be together.
Which instantly should have been a red flag. Okay, so but at this point, this is one of the times when it's like, okay, the movie could have ended.
Yeah.
Right? I think a typical rom-com movie would have ended somewhere in here. Mm-hmm. But then it does not. And so I was like, okay, we still got like 30 minutes left. What is happening? So then he gets into the shower. And this is his first shower as a human. And so picture a completely naked Nic Cage stepping into the shower. And then when the water hits him, he like jumps back and turns. And I'm pretty sure, my next one is, I'm pretty sure I saw some Cage penis.
He had to have been wearing one of the sleeve sock things.
I feel like, I don't know, but there was definitely like a swinging dick I saw for like, it's like just for a split second, but it's kind of like Terminator, right? Where when he's naked and he gets up and you can see like the outline of his stuff for a second. But in this case, it was like he flipped. Like, I'm wondering if Nick just like flipped and didn't realize his dung was going to like flop out everywhere.
Physics, Nick. It's physics.
I mean, in general, I think like nowadays actors wear like a flesh-colored G-string essentially, so that doesn't happen. But this seems like that didn't happen in this movie. They definitely wanted some dick flop. But yeah. That was the first time wait, was there a scene in Zandali where we could see like a little penis? I
think so, but that movie had like a ton of nudity.
Yeah, there's a lot of nudity. This one was much different, and it seems unintentional, though I don't know how it got past them.
Maybe they just couldn't reshoot it.
Maybe, yeah. Then we get the nice helicopter shot over the woods. It's like 5 minutes long. Just like a helicopter flying through the woods around the house, which I thought was a weird use of a helicopter shot, but hey, it's an establishing shot, I guess.
There you go.
So while Nic Cage is like waking up in the morning, she decides to go out and get some pears because
she wants to make him breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she goes out to get some food, and she's like riding her bike and loving life, and the world is so happy and the sun's out. And,
I guess we did kind of gloss over that she rides her bike to the hospital when she's working, and she's pretty reckless, I guess would be the appropriate word.
Yeah. And so she goes and gets all her groceries, and she's headed back, and a logging truck pulls out in front of her.
Well, she's doing all of these like wow. She's doing all of these like arms wide open, eyes closed.
Yeah, she's like so happy.
Right? Like biking. Like she never wears a helmet. So, her ex-fiance likes to smoke. She doesn't wear a helmet. These are doctors, surgeons. But they keep cutting back and forth between her not looking at the road and Nick like doing whatever at the house. He's in the shower, getting dressed, whatever, waiting for her, sitting down. He's all very like excited, to have
Yeah.
this meal with her and everything. And then
Right. And then a logging truck pulls out in front of her and she apparently can't stop her bike.
it's all in slow motion. We get to watch the horror
She
in her
gets
eyes. Final destination.
smashed by this logging truck. And we see a dead Meg Ryan. And somehow Seth can sense that this has happened and he runs all the way down to where the wreck happened and starts like crying and being emotional because he just like gave up eternal life for this woman and now she's dead.
By the way, huge continuity error at this point because the truck's on the wrong side of the road. So when we're watching the actual accident, the truck is pulling out from right to left when she hits it. And when we have the aftermath of it, the truck is going the other direction.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just saying that's a big one. That's all I'm saying.
So then we get a rainy funeral.
Yeah.
Which is fun. And then apparently he's just living at her uncle's house now.
Well, no, I think he's back at her house.
Is that what it was? Oh, yeah, he lives at her house now.
But this is also very problematic because, like, how?
She's dead. And he's just, like, living at her house. But he doesn't have any money? How does he pay rent?
How does he own it? Like, it's her house. I'm sure it was willed to next of kin or somebody or something. And if not, then it goes up to auction or whatever.
No, it goes to the angel that falls. Yeah, so at this point, I was really trying to figure out what this movie was, which seems to be a common thread for a lot of these movies. Like, if it had ended when we talked about earlier, then it would have been pretty standard, like, 90s romantic comedy. But when she dies, and it's just, depressing, like, what was this movie trying to be? What was the message it was trying to get across? What was the overall intention of this movie? Because I still can't really figure it out.
I think
it's not a romantic comedy or like a romantic movie at all at this point.
It's a romance film. I think the key is the final conversation between Cecile and Seth. When Seth is at the house by himself and it's late at night and he's all depressed, he knows that Cecile is there. He's like, I can see you or whatever. I know you're here. And Cecile reveals himself and Seth is furious at him at first. Like, were you the one who took her? Yada, yada, yada. Like he had a choice. Like, cause he knows how it works. It's not like they choose to kill the person. That's not what they do, but whatever. He's mad. And Cecile asks him, he goes, well, knowing what you know now, would you have still done it? And Nick mentions that a laundry list of one-time things would have been enough, right? One, whiff of her hair, one touch of whatever, right? And the idea is, I think, supposed to be that the opportunity to experience her as a human was worth everything. And so I think the moral of the story that we're supposed to take away is the human experience is what we should be appreciating, what we should be focusing on. And whatever comes later doesn't really matter. We should live for today.
I think it's a stretch, but it's a better explanation than what I have. So there you go.
That's how the movie ends. So
actually the movie ends at a different point than that. The movie ends with Nic Cage going to the beach.
Yeah.
And running out into the water like Messinger did earlier.
But that ties into what I'm saying. It has to do with experience, the human experience, the things that the angels can't do, right? They don't feel the sand beneath their toes or the cold of the water or anything like that. None of that is experienced by them. They're almost like ghosts, just kind of passing through our world for eons. And so I think really the moral is that, human life is short and fragile, but it is also deep and rich, and you should experience it. And the experience is worth the pain, is supposed to be the idea. Whether or not you agree with that, of course, is your own personal perspective. But I think that's what the movie is trying to say.
Okay. Well, that's how the movie ends. And he does get a little cagey face while he's swimming.
I'm sure it was cold.
Probably. But yeah, that's the end of the movie.
And that's it. Yeah. So now we got to rate it. So we rate our movies on 2 different scales, quality and caginess, 0 through 20. 20 is high, 0 is low. Ryan, on quality for City of Angels, where would you rate it?
Where did I put It Could Happen to You?
All right. So It Could Happen to You is our second episode for those who are curious. You gave it a 12.
Okay. I'm going to give this an 11 because I didn't enjoy it as much as It Could Happen to You, but it was still pretty, it was a little bit better than average, I would say.
I think that's really fair. I was actually going to give it a 10.
Okay.
Right in the middle. It's a totally fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I think the internet might hate us, or certain specific people might hate us for that, because apparently it's a fairly revered movie of his. But yeah, I don't really agree.
I mean, it's got a 6.
I like his performance. I like his performance in it. I'll say that. But maybe if I was rating his performance specifically, I'd probably rate it higher than that. But overall, the movie would be, wasn't that great.
There are things I like, concepts that I like about it. I think you're right. That like having him have such a different role was a breath of fresh air. It was nice.
Agreed.
Change of pace.
I definitely enjoyed it. So.
Yeah.
What do you think for caginess, Derreck?
Pretty low, man. There is very, like you said, there's a little bit of the dancing, there's the laugh. I don't want to get I'm not going to give it a 0 or anything like that. But I'm thinking maybe I'm thinking a 3, which is what I gave Racing with the Moon.
I don't remember Racing with the Moon. Which one was that?
The one where he's going to go off to the Marines or whatever to fight in the war. He works at the bowling alley.
Oh yeah. The period piece. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty similar to that in terms of Cage, just because there's one KG scene in that movie, and that was about it. So yeah, I'd probably say a 4. I'd probably be right in there with you.
That's what you gave Racing with the Moon.
Yeah,
so
pretty similar.
Okay, so a 10.5 on quality, so right in the middle there, and a 3.5 on caginess, which kind of actually puts it all alone as far as Cage movies are concerned. So that's very interesting. So, all right. So there's that. Kind of the last bit on the to-do is to find out which Nicolas Cage movie is going to replace City of Angels on the wheel. And I guess we'll actually have to do 2 of these because of Werewolf Women of the SS. So the first one to join the wheel is we got National Treasure Book of Secrets. And we have decided, the 2 of us, that whenever we get something that has a sequel, we're going to cover the first movie first.
So we're just going to put the first National Treasure movie on there.
National Treasure. The second movie to join the wheel is going to be the Any Bully. The Any Bully? The Ant Bully. It's probably supposed to be the Ant Bully. I think that's a typo on my part. I'm pretty sure the movie is the Ant Bully. So the Ant Bully and National Treasure are going to join the wheel. The Ant Bully is one of his few animated outings, so it's a voice part. So there's that from 2006 for those who don't know. So those 2 are going to join the wheel. You'll have to go to comingofcage.com to find the Wheel O Cage to find out which movie we will be watching next based on the wheel's spin. So you can do that comingofcage.com. Ryan, anything else for City of Angels or Werewolf Women of the SS?
No, I think we covered pretty much all of it.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's us then. I'm Derek. That's Ryan. We're the Coming of Cage podcast. Thank you so much for listening or watching. If you watched us, you can go and do that. Always good. Feel free to comment. You can review. Reviews are always nice. If you review us, we'll read your review on the show.
That's right. Derek will do it in a Nic Cage voice. So.
I'm not promising that.
That is something he promised off the air.
So. Nope. Didn't happen. But thank you all.
Yep.
Love your support. We'll catch you next time.